specifically. And I'm going to, at the end, give you a little bit of a pitch about Voxeo. So, the first thing that has happened, the first trend, the first meta trend of the 5 trends I'll go through, is that obviously hardware has become much faster and much cheaper. But I don't think we really understand and remember just how much hardware has improved. A friend of mine, Skip Cave, used to be chief scientist at Intervoice, talked about the early days of IVR. He said the first IVR system they deployed actually used reel-to-reel tape drives. You would call in, they'd have one set of reel-to-reel tape drives that would play a prompt. It would get to the point that it was going to record, it would switch to another reel-to-reel tape drive that would actually record your answer. Okay? So that's how IVR initially worked. And then when we got into the 80s and early 90s, we started getting computer telephony boards like dialogic cards, where you could do 1 to 192 calls on a server. These boards cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and they went into servers that cost thousands and thousands of dollars as well. Then the world moved to media servers and gateways. This was in the mid-90s. You could do 24 to about 2,000 calls per box. Hardware costs moved down to several $100s per port. And where we are today in hardware is using commoditized servers, typically with an Intel chipset, although we think that that's going to change over time, where you can do 20 to 15,000 calls on a single server. And we actually have our software running where we'll do 15,000 IVR calls with speech on a single box. It's amazing. So, to just give you a visual representation of how much things have changed. Voxeo started off life as a hosting company. We built a cloud, and this is literally one of the original servers that we used to build our first 2,000 port deployment. Each one of these boxes cost about $3,500. They weigh about 35 pounds, and it took, you want to guess how many boxes to do 2,000 ports? It took about 500 of these servers to do 2,000 ports when we started our IVR hosting platform. Our first 2,000 port deployment was 500 boxes like this across data centers. Now what about today? I'll give you a couple of examples. This phone right here costs $500. This phone is 8 times more powerful than that server is. Okay? 8 times more powerful. Next year, we're going to have the first 8-core CPUs in phones. There'll be phones that are 16 times more powerful than that server was. We are planning on porting our full software stack to this phone, although we are porting part of our platform to phones like this. But if we ported our full software stack to this phone, we think we could run about 4,000 or 5,000 calls. This could actually be an IVR server, and we could run 4,000 or 5,000 calls on it for about $500. Perhaps more impressively is this little gizmo. How many of you guys have heard of Raspberry Pi? I mean, not the thing you eat. I would hope most of you have heard of Raspberry Pi. How many of you have heard of the Raspberry Pi computer? Okay, well inside this box is a little computer. It's got a 700 megahertz processor. We believe that we could eventually run about 200 calls on this box. Does anyone who knows about Raspberry Pi want to yell out how much these cost? $35. Okay? So this $35 box can run 10 times the number of calls that $3,500 server could 10 years. Right? Again, I don't think we remember how dramatic changes are. This is another example. This is a little $200 computer. Okay? It's got a dual-core 1.2 gigahertz power PC. We believe ultimately we can run about 1,000 to 2,000 calls on this $200 box. Right? Now, as part of the Magic Act, I'm going to switch over to RJ's computer here. There we go. RJ is going to deploy a 2,000 port IVR self-service platform with speech while I'm talking. Okay? Live over the internet. We're using a service called Joint Cloud. This is a virtual cloud computing platform. You could use Amazon You could use Rackspace. We really love Joyent. We love the guys at Joyent. They have an amazing platform built on a fork of Solaris at its core. Great stuff. You should check it out if you haven't already. So RJ's literally asked Joyent for a new machine while we're sitting here. Okay? And while we're sitting here, he's going to install our software. And at the end of this, we're actually going to make a call in. The point is to show not just where we are today, but where things are going. Where the combination of great hardware and great software is going to take us over the next 30 years. So he's away and running. It looks like he's going to SSH into the box. Joyent already has it up with provision. In the meantime, I'm going to switch back over to our PowerPoint. So, what's the second thing that has changed over the last 30 years? Customer preferences have changed, especially as it relates to the devices they use. Remember, if you're over 30 years old, you probably know what this is. If you're under 30, that's called a pager. And your parents pretty much all had one back in the day. Who had a pager at one point? See? Who has a pager today? No pagers. Industry pretty much completely disappeared. We all had one of these, right? The infamous Motorola thin StarTAC phone. Yeah. Right? Who had one of these Motorola thin StarTACs? Yeah, maybe 10, 20% of the audience. It was a great phone at its time. Does anyone use one of those today? Show of hands. All right. Oh, the original Palm Pilot. Who had a Palm Pilot of any sort over time? Who uses the Palm Pilot today? Yeah? And at one point, most of us have one of these. A modern Palm device, a compact iPad Windows phone, original Windows phone, you know, like 8 generations ago, 8 attempts ago, Microsoft at making a phone, or a BlackBerry. Who had one of those devices? Show of hands. Who has one of these types of devices today? Guy from Microsoft, the red, back there. How you doing? Good to see you. Then this happened. Right? Who remembers when this came out? Who stood in line and actually got one of these things when they came out? Right? Completely changed everything. Who has an iPhone today? Who has an iOS device of any sort today? Yeah, about more than half. Right? Completely changed consumer preferences, which also completely changed mobile customer service. Up until this phone, even though there were smartphone applications, none of us really used our Palm Pilots or our Blackberries or our early Windows phones to do customer service. The app ecosystems were very small and very limited, but this changed things. Mobile customer service started becoming applications, not just IVR. Today we have this. We've got great iOS devices like the iPhone 4S and the new iPad. We have great Android devices. Who uses an Android device of any sort? You'll notice I have a problem. I've raised my hand for every single one of these. Right? Does anyone know what a Bell South Simon phone was? Exactly. I had one. The original PDA was about the size of a brick. They sold 3,000 of them nationwide, and I bought one. Right? Now, as a representative market share, you also have BlackBerry and new Windows Phone over here. So, you know, they're still kind of hanging out. But clearly, iPhone, iOS, and Android are dominating the world today. And as a result, they're becoming dominant forces in mobile customer service. Who's used customer service apps on one of these devices? To rent a car, check an airline, check your bank balance. It probably looks like about a third of us. So what are customer preferences today for self-service? It's really, really simple. They want to use their iPhone, they want to use their Android tablets, they want to use an iPad, they want to use their Android phone, they want to use the mobile web, they want to use SMS, they want to use IVR, they want to use social media. No problem. There's only about a dozen different things you need to do, and if you're a large multinational company, you only have to do them in about 15 languages with probably 8 different back-end systems. No problem. You multiply it out. There's about 300 applications you have to do. You spend hundreds of man years delivering it. It's actually a big problem. And this is only getting more and more complex. Another thing that's happened, fraud has grown exponentially. exponentially. I'm not sure everyone is aware of how significant fraud has become over the telephone. How many of you saw the article about the guy with the MacBook and iCloud that had everything wiped out because somebody socially engineered their way into Apple? They called up Apple, they convinced Apple that they were this guy, they got their password reset, and once they were into his Apple account, they were able to remotely wipe his iPhone, remotely wipe his iPad, remotely wipe his MacBook, take over his Twitter account, all kinds of things, okay? Fraud is growing at an amazing rate. Data breaches have reached an all-time record high, increasing more than 4,000% in the last 2 years. That's from the 2012 Data Breach Investigations Report. Some more statistics. For every $100 in fraudulent transactions, retailers incurred a true cost of $230. In other words, somebody might steal $100 from them, and then they spend another $130 figuring out that somebody stole $100 from them and trying to figure out how it happened. Okay? Consumer out-of-cost average expense for fraud is $244. When consumers are impacted by fraud, on average, a cost of $244. That's not including their personal time. The average time it took to resolve fraud issues rose by 57% in 1 year, from 2010 to 2011. And fraud continues to cost retail merchants alone, just retail merchants, over $100 billion annually. When you add together all forms of fraud, it's believed to be about $500 billion in fraud that happens per year. And this is only going to get worse. Unfortunately, for example, as the internet becomes more pervasive, and the internet connects very, very low income countries and geographies, very, very high income geographies, and they used to be like, 5,000 miles away from each other. So the Class B couldn't affect the Class A. Now they're like 250 milliseconds away from each other over the internet. Fraud is only going to get worse. The other trend that's happened over the last 30 years is that great software, truly great software, has become both much faster and much easier to use. Kind of okay software becomes either faster or easier, and kind of crappy software does neither one. So what are some examples of this? First one, Windows to iOS. I mean, you remember 10, 15 years ago, it was like Microsoft was on top of the world. They owned everything. They were being investigated by the FTC for monopolistic behavior because nobody else could sell anything. And they had a $500 billion market cap. Does anyone know what their market cap is today? It's half that. Microsoft lost half their value over the last 10 years. Largely because that value has shifted to Linux, but more significantly to iOS, to the point that Apple is now, by revenues, the largest, and by public market cap, the largest company in the world. Well, how did they do that? They came out with hardware, yes, but as we showed before, there were plenty of phones out there, some great phones. I mean, we loved our BlackBerries back in the day. And we loved our early Windows phones. We loved our Motorola StarTechs. We didn't sit there and go, this crappy Motorola StarTech. We loved it. But then this new hardware came out. It wasn't actually all that different than the old hardware, but the software on it was amazing. It was faster. It was so much easier to use. Remember, the original iPhone didn't even have an application ecosystem. There was no app store. You couldn't build apps for it. But still, people bought them by the hundreds of thousands of millions because it was better software that was faster and easier to use. Yahoo to Google. We all loved Yahoo back in the day. Google came out, worked faster, it was easier to use. Market moved over to Google, right? What I call friend decay, right? We used to have this thing where, we go to high school, we go to college, we make friends, we lose touch with them, we always wonder, I wonder what happened to them. Then Facebook came out, and now everyone we've ever known in our entire lives is now connected to us, and we have the opposite problem. You actually can't get rid of people, right? You get on Facebook and say, oh geez, I can't befriend them now. Why did that happen? Facebook was a much faster way for people to connect with each other, and a much easier way for people to connect with each other. They took off. How many of you guys have used a service called Uber? Okay? Uber is amazing. It's like magic technology. Uber is an app you put on your iPhone or your Android. You give it your credit card number, create an account. And let's say you want to leave here tonight, you need to take a ride over to New Jersey. You pull up the Uber app, it'll bring up a map, it'll show you where all the limos and town cars and SUVs are around you that are available. You click one button and it'll say, your Uber car will be there in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, whatever it is. It shows you the car on the map coming to you. It shows you a picture of who your driver is going to be. You can press one button and instantly call the driver. It's amazing. It's like having your own personal driver at all times. You just install the Uber app, you click the button, it's in San Francisco, New York, and DC today, but they're growing to other markets, and boom, you have your own personal driver anytime you want. I was just in San Francisco at the Outside Lands Music Festival. We left the second day early to get ahead of the wave of people leaving. There was 60,000 people at the Outside Lands Music Festival. We walked 2 blocks, we got to the street corner, we pressed a button, called for an Uber. It said your Uber will be there in 7 minutes. We started talking to the people around us. There were 5 other groups on that one corner, not at the 4 corners of that intersection. On that one corner, there were 5 other groups of people who were waiting for their Uber car to arrive. In San Francisco, Uber has taken over. Okay? Why has it succeeded? It made it faster to do something instead of these awkward calls. It made it easier. We would also contend that certain unnamed legacy IVR and mobile self-service platform vendors have switched to Voxeo for similar reasons. We'll show you some of just how fast and how easy to use our software is. So how's RJ doing? Let's switch over to RJ here for a second. Look at that. He's got the software installed. Services are coming up and running. Good job, RJ. So what's the other thing that has happened over the last 30 years? Cycles have happened. Every 5 years, every 10 years, lots of things change. Right? Client server to web technologies to smartphone applications. Right? Pagers to iPhone and Android. In between were lots of cycles. Those cycles are going to continue to happen. They're going to continue to happen over and over again every 5 to 10 years. And we may think that the technology that we use today is amazing. The technology that's coming over the next 5 years is going to be exponentially even more amazing. The software from some great vendors, again, be even more exponentially amazing. The technology, the services like Uber, it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. A great quote on this. All this has happened before, and all this will happen again. That's from Cylon Model number 6 from Battlestar Galactica. How many people watch Battlestar Galactica? I love that quote. All this has happened before, and all this will happen again. That fundamentally describes what is going to happen over the next 5, 10, 30 years. Everything is going to continue to change. 5 years from now, everything will be very different than it was today. We may be flying around in jet cars, we may be using holographic, phone devices, who knows? It sounds silly, but something as magical as that will happen over the next 5 years. So what's next? So what's next is basically what I just talked about. Hardware will get much faster and cheaper. Customers will change preferences often. Fraud will continue to grow faster and faster and faster. Great software. Great software will become both faster and easier to use. And the cycles will happen again and again and again. In summary, change happens. And change will continue to happen. And as companies, we need to be prepared for change. So, the pitch. How does Voxeo fit in all this? Well, we believe that customers should pick products and vendors that understand change. Because change is the driving force in technology, and technology is now the driving force in customer service. We believe you should pick products and vendors that embrace change, that don't try to lock you in legacy platforms, but are excruciatingly open. That's a term we use at Voxeo a lot. We describe ourselves as an excruciatingly open company. Sometimes we're so open it actually hurts ourselves. Okay? I'll give you an example of that. We started off as an IVR hosting company. We built a great IVR hosting business. We'll talk about that in a bit. But in 2005, we identified conceptually an ability to build a completely different kind of premise IVR platform. A kind of premise IVR platform that was so easy to install and manage that it was almost retail-like in its simplicity. Something, that people can come to our website, download in a couple minutes, install in a couple minutes, and have up and running on any computer in 10 minutes without having to go get third-party software with speech recognizers and synthesizers and application servers, all built into Prophecy, all built into our IVR platform. You don't have to download anything else. Now you can, it works great with Nuance. We love the Nuance guys. Great technology fit with the Prophecy platform. Works great with other ASR and TDS vendors. Works great with a bunch of different SIP vendors. You can tie it into any PBX, any SIP hosting service, etc. And pick products and vendors that drive change. For 12 years, Voxeo has driven change. 12 years ago, we deployed a voice XML and SIP hosting platform. At the time, it was excruciatingly risky. We didn't bet on one iffy standard, we bet on two at once. Now today, it's obvious that voice XML and SIP are the way that telephony, customer self-service are done. Back then, it was not. So RJ, how are we doing? Okay. We're going to switch over to RJ for a second. So while we've been sitting here in, about 15 minutes, RJ has installed our software. Well, not just that. He's gotten a server, gotten a dynamic virtual cloud server up and running, installed our software, okay, licensed it for 2,000 ports, gone in, created an application, and I'm going to jump out of my PowerPoint for a second here. I'll switch back to my screen. And let's see here. Put this IP address right here of the server. Okay. So this is Phono. This is another Voxeo product. It's from our Voxeo Lab division. This is a phone that runs inside of any web browser. If it has Flash, if it has Java, if it has a new WebRTC standard, it'll figure out. It's like a 4-year-old kid. It will figure out to get what it wants, no matter what gets in the way. No matter how many firewalls get in the way, it will figure out a way to make calls happen. So we're going to call into that server real quick that I already just set up. Oh, hold on. I'll plug the audio.
HD.
Oh, one more time. And again, he set up his whole server, 2,000 port deployment, 15 minutes.
Go see the Prophecy server. Next up, hello operator by the white stripes in HD.
So that was the bit of magic. 15 minutes, 2,000 ports, no problem. Now, obviously, Penn and Teller, we got Teller doing the magic, we got our CTO doing it, but trust me, mortal human beings can do this in a half an hour. Right? The combination of great hardware, cloud computing, software was exceptionally easy. Download, install, provision, and manage. With great features, you might have noticed that was actually HD audio. One of the features of our platform is HD audio. Why is that important? One of the things I can guarantee you over the next 5 years is that all of your cell phones will support HD audio. You will have an audio experience on your cell phone which is dramatically better than what you have today. We're working with mobile carriers, working closely with them. They are all deploying HD audio technology. The first deployment in the US will be out later this year. So back to the PowerPoint for a minute, we'll finish up the pitch. In addition to Prophecy, we have another platform called Voice Objects, and Voice Objects is designed to help you manage the complexity of those customer preferences I talked about, right? Having 10 different ways to interact, mobile web, native apps, IVR telephony, SMS, etc. Having a dozen different languages you have to support, having a half a dozen different back-end systems that you need to integrate with. This actually describes a lot of our customers, right? T-Mobile International is one of our customers. Outside of the US, T-Mobile uses us in almost every country where they have presence. If you contact T-Mobile for customer service, whether it's via your phone, as a call, SMS, a kiosk in a store, a mobile web application, a smartphone application, those interactions are all going through the Voxeo Voice Objects platform. The Voice Objects platform is amazingly good at managing complexity. It's takes all that matrix of options and brings it down to one simple platform that lets you build things once, deploy them, analyze them, and manage them. One of the things that we're announcing, a new product, Boxeo Security Suite. Like a lot of our products, this came from a first-hand experience. Fraud within our own customer base increased significantly. We had one weekend where a company set up a virtual phone company in Eastern Europe, got a premium rate phone number, used a fake credit or a stolen credit card to deploy an app on our platform, and just called this premium rate number in Estonia all weekend long. Okay? Cost us about $180,000 in toll fraud in 2 days. Right? We had a first-hand problem with fraud, and we said, you know, if fraud is growing exponentially for us, it must be growing exponentially for our customer. So we worked for a year to put together a whole suite of new products and features specifically to help our customers prevent fraud. Boxeo ANI Verifier verifies that people are calling in are not spoofing caller ID, that they're from the caller ID being presented is real and not fake. Full Verifier makes sure that places that you're calling to, outbound notifications, etc., are not going to new premium rate numbers. Voice Verifier uses voice biometrics from the leading vendors in the industry to verify that the person on the phone by voice is who they should be. Location Verifier verifies that the mobile phone they're using is where they should be. You know, if they're in the gap trying to charge a credit card, Visa can make sure that their cell phone is actually at that gap. Okay? Or it can verify that charges aren't coming from all over the world while their cell phone is back in the US. Payment Verifier uses essentially your credit history to ask you dynamic questions to figure out if you really are who you claim you are. PCI Verifier is software in our platform that watches what your application is doing, and it looks for signs that what you're doing is not PCI compliant. How many of you are familiar with PCI? Okay, PCI is payment card industry. Oh, yeah, checking for updates. Thank you, Microsoft. PCI is payment card industry, and they have a standard called PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. And basically, if you take credit cards in your business, you have to be PCI compliant. If you do any kind of hosting, which describes everybody, you know, you get a web server, you have to be PCI DSS compliant. And the Boxeo PCI Verifier watches what your applications are doing, and it looks for signs that they're doing things that are not PCI compliant, so that you can proactively avoid expensive fraud and PCI compliance audits. Finally, Boxeo Level 1 PCI hosting takes in our hosting cloud everything that you need to be PCI compliant in a pre-deployed infrastructure, so you don't have to do it yourself. The cost for a medium-sized business to do PCI compliance is easily $250,000. Okay? So this Level 1 PCI hosting service helps our customers avoid $250,000 in compliance costs to take credit cards over the phone or over the mobile web or over SMS or over a kiosk or any of the other channels that we support. The thing that's cool about our security suite is that adding forms of prevention, adding different parts of that suite together multiplies the protection that you can provide for yourselves and for your customers when it comes to fraud. As I mentioned, we started off as an IVR hosting company. We're one of, I think, the only worldwide IVR hosting companies. We have 6 locations around the world today we host out of, 2 in the US, 2 in Europe, 2 in Asia. Especially loved by multinational companies because they don't have to go to 6 different vendors to cover the world. We've got it all in one infrastructure. How do we fare in IVR hosting? Well, if you look at that red circle that is at the top and to the right, that's Boxeo. This is the OVM report, OVM decision matrix on hosted IVR. That's our heritage. We've done very well. But as I mentioned, we came out with a premise IVR platform in 2006. That's what RJ installed here on the joint cloud in 15 minutes. How does that one fare? Well, the new Gartner report for premise IVR came out just this morning. And you'll notice that there are only 2 companies that Gartner ranks as strong positive, Genesis and Boxeo. So we have an amazing platform for premise IVR as well. In addition, again, to all the forms of multi-channel self-service that I described earlier. So thanks for going through 30 years of history with me, and hopefully a little bit of insight on what's going to happen in the next 30. Thanks for bearing with me through the pitch as well. If you've got any questions at all, if you'd like to talk to me or anyone else on the team, stop by our booth 501. It's right at the front entrance of the SpeechTEK side of the conference floor. And we'd happily talk to you, show you more of our software, tell you more about what we do. Thanks again. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.